Okay, good morning. We're going to make a start. My name is Louise Rance. I am a HR business partner with Clover HR, and this webinar is top tips for managing change in the workplace. Good to have you with me. A little bit about ourselves. So I'm part of Clover HR. We're a HR consultancy based throughout the UK. We are your trusted people advisors, and we're here to help you in any way we can. There's a team of 20 HR consultants, and together we have over 150 years experience between us. So we can ensure that you get the very best advice and service. We all have our individual specialisms in areas of people, from recruitment, training, coaching, mediation, well-being, rewards, and many other people strategies. The company started out in Worcester and Birmingham, and since then we have spread to many parts of the UK. I'm based in Bury near Manchester. We have consultants in Birmingham, Liverpool, the Peak District, Wales, to name but a few. Little bit about myself. So as I said, my name's Louise Rance. I'm a HR business partner, and my particular specialism is workplace mediator. My background, I've worked in HR for over 20 years with a variety of corporate companies. So to name but a few: Job Centre Plus, Probation Service, Manchester United as a HR business partner, Calico Homes, Great Places Housing Group, and I've worked at HR business partner and HR manager level. And I've dealt with the whole range of HR, everything you can think of. Well, you're always learning something new every day. You have got a Q&A function. I do encourage you to use it. So if you have any questions, just pop them in there. I'll answer them as I go along, or I'll answer them at the end, wherever seems to fit. But I do encourage you to do that. I want to make sure you get the very best out of the webinar today. I have muted your microphones just so that the webinar will flow. So let's look at change. A couple of quotes here. So to improve is to change. To be perfect is to change often, Winston Churchill. And change is the only constant. Heraclitus, a Greek philosopher. So there we've got two prominent people saying that change is a good thing. And when we think about change in our personal lives, so changes we might make, which might be a new job, moving house, getting married, when you talk to people about their personal change, they're quite often enthusiastic and optimistic and looking to the future. So why is it when we look to make changes in the workplace that people often view them negatively, and it creates kind of maybe worry and suspicion? And what can we do to improve the way we introduce and embed change and lead change and help people along the way with that? So this is what we're going to look at today to help us address that question. So we're going to consider the forces of change. What creates change? We're going to look at what are the problems with change when we're introducing change in the workplace. What can go wrong? What are the barriers? We're going to consider an 8-step model for managing change. And then we're going to consider how Clover can help you introduce and embed change. And we'll do a summary at the end, and we'll take some questions if we've got time. So let's look at the operating environment that we're in. We live in a VUCA world. What is VUCA? So VUCA is a model that was first used by the armed services in order to plan for a changing environment. And since then, it's been adopted in the business world by a variety of companies because it does seem to fit. So what does it stand for? V for volatility. We live in a fast, unpredictable world with change without clear patterns or trends. It's difficult to predict. And what could have been more difficult to predict than the pandemic that we're slowly coming out of now with COVID-19 and all the changes that brought? Uncertain, so there's frequent disruptive changes where the past is not a very good predictor of the future. So we can't always rely on things that worked for us before to work for the environment we're in now. Complexity. Our environment is multiple, complex, intertwined with technological, societal, geographical and ecological evolutions. So there's a lot going on. Changes in technology we need to keep up with, changes in legislation, changes in our environment like Brexit, ambiguity. So there's little clarity on what's real or true, and it's difficult to predict the impact or actions or initiatives. And think of all the changes that we've all been through over the last 2 years with managing COVID, introducing extra health and safety measures, a lot of people working from home, using technology like we're using now, Zoom as an everyday communication. And with that change, it's brought changes in the way that companies work. And it may be that that change has led to restructures or the need to be more agile. So let's consider some of the problems when we're looking at affecting change. So it's well established the complexities and difficulties of delivering change, with failure rates frequently cited as being as high as 70% in businesses that are trying to introduce a change programme. And that failure to introduce effective change can have a high impact, including loss of market position, removal of senior management, loss of stakeholder credibility, could lead to loss of key employees, and a reduction in employee engagement and motivation. So what can go wrong? What are the barriers to introducing change? What are the problems? One of the key things, and certainly I've experienced this in companies that I've worked for, have been a lack of effective project management and project management disciplines. And this can lead to slipped timings, achieving the desired outcomes, and ensuring that projects deliver as planned. If you don't have somebody that's managing the project with the correct skills and put a project team together, then you're really setting yourself up for failure. Change that might consider a new structure, but fails to establish the new systems and processes to support it. I'll give you an example of this. A housing association used to use different companies to carry out the repairs on their properties. They decided to bring that in-house. But the way they brought it in-house was quite rushed and not thoroughly planned through. So what happened was they brought together and recruited a repairs team, but they didn't have the systems in place that enabled an effective system for tenants to report repairs and then for those repairs to be recorded as being. And that caused quite a chaos for over a year until the problem was addressed and more resource brought in. But it could have all been avoided with proper planning and a proper project team. Insufficient training on project management, change management and leadership skills. You really need these skills to effect thorough and effective change. And if you haven't got them, then it's worthwhile bringing them in. So bringing an external consultant, bringing somebody in on a fixed term contract. Poor communication. If there's poor communication, that can lead to greater employee resistance. And you could encounter individual or group resistance, and that could be resistance to the content of the change, i.e. what it is, what it means, or the process of the change, the way it's actually implemented and managed. So how can we avoid some of these problems? This is where I want to talk to you about an 8-step model for implementing change. So this 8-step model was introduced or devised by a man called John Cotter, who is a Harvard business professor. And he introduced this 8-step model into his 1995 book, Leading Change, which is well worth a read. So let's go through this model. Establish a sense of urgency. So help people understand why the change is needed. And I'll go into all these in more detail, but why the change is needed, how quickly it needs to be created, what will be the benefits. Form a powerful coalition. This would be your project team. Create a vision for the change. If you create a vision for the change as a leader of that change, you're more likely to get people on board. Once you've created that vision, then communicate the vision to increase buy-in. Look to remove any obstacles, anticipate and remove them. Generate short-term wins, so break the project down into short-term targets and wins so you can celebrate that achievement. Then build on the change that you've made and anchor the change firmly within the company. So let's look at those in more detail. The first step, establish a sense of urgency. So again, some statistics to give to you. John Cotter established that for change to be implemented effectively, you need at least 75% of your management team on board with that change, actively behind it. So it's easier to implement change if everybody recognises that it's needed. So talk about why you make, what's prompted the change, why does it need to be made? Identify the potential threats and the opportunities of that change. So point out the benefits. Start honest conversations and create a sense of mission. The next step, form a powerful coalition. So you need to convince people that change is necessary and lead it and own it. Identify the true leaders in your organisation and get them on board. So this is when you're forming your project team. So those people can be from a variety of job roles and levels within the companies. And what you're looking to do here is engage your key influencers and get them on board and into your project team. And in that project team, your coalition, ensure that you've got a good mix of people from different areas of the business and bring them together as a team so they can communicate and support the change that you're introducing. Create a vision for the change. So create a vision for change that people can easily grasp and remember. To do that, develop a short summary that captures what you see as the future of the organisation and create a strategy to execute that vision. And ensure that your change coalition, your project team, can recite that vision in 5 minutes or less. And to give you an example here, so Lego have as their mission statement to inspire and develop the builders of tomorrow. How inspiring is that? And just to talk to you a little bit about Lego, in 2004, Lego were a company that were on the verge of bankruptcy. And they changed that around to become the world's most powerful brand by 2014. And the way they did that was to create a vision that inspired their employees and their management, and everybody got behind. And they created a purpose. Their ultimate purpose is to inspire and develop children to think creatively, reason systematically, and release their potential to shape their own future. Experience the endless human possibility. Again, how inspiring is that? So it's looking for, what is your company about? What is your aspiration? What's the difference you're going to make? And encapsulating all that into your vision. So once you have your vision, then communicate the vision to increase buy-in. So talk about your change vision often as you can in your company communications when you're talking to people. Give people opportunity to address, so that you can address their concerns honestly and openly. It's not processes and systems that change a company or organisation. It's the people in that organisation getting behind that change and making it work, adapting that different way of working. Create a strategy to execute that vision. So have a strategy behind the vision and apply your vision to all aspects of operations, from training to performance reviews, and tie everything back to the vision and lead by example. So remove obstacles. So identify, hire or change leaders whose main roles are to deliver the change. You need your key people, your key leaders to be behind this change and actively promoting it. Look at your organisational structures, your job descriptions, performance and compensation systems to ensure that they are in line with your vision. If your vision is about quality, then ensure that that quality is embedded in all your competencies and your ways of working. Recognise and reward people for making that change happen and be public about it. Identify people who are resisting the change and help them see what's needed. And most importantly, try to understand where they're coming from, why they're resisting the change. So let's look a bit more closely at that people element of change. So you may have come across before the Kubler-Ross change curve. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross was a psychologist who did a lot of work on grief and bereavement and the stages people go through. And she originally created this model. And since then, it's been adapted in the business world because it's been recognised that any significant change, we will all go through this to a greater or lesser extent. So let's look at what this means. And what we're going to look at is in understanding the stages that people go through. What we're looking to do is to try and flatten this change curve and shorten it, so we help people through these stages perhaps quicker than if there wasn't any kind of intervention or support. So stage one, when people first encounter change, their initial reaction may be one of shock, surprise that the change is happening, and denial, disbelief, trying to deny that it's happening at all, looking for evidence that it's not true. And what people need from you at this stage is communication, which is critical. Communicating why the change is being introduced, how it's going to be done, what support will be there for people to help them through it, and most importantly, what are the benefits of the change. Then people move through to stage two, which is this stage of frustration. So this is when people are recognising that, yes, the change is happening, things are going to be different. And this can be when people might have more of an emotional response. So they might become angry. Some people may experience sadness because there's a loss when there's any change. Even if the change is positive, there's still been a loss for the way things were. So people may experience depression or low mood or be lacking in energy. And it's at this point that is the real danger zone for change. So the way to deal with this is to address people's concerns openly and honestly, create forums to do that. So you might have Q&A sheets where to answer people's common questions, have one-to-one meetings, whatever support people need, this is the time to be doing it. As people move through that stage, they come to the experimental stage. So this is when there's more acceptance that the change is happening, and there could be hopefully some recognition that actually there are some positives to this. So people begin testing and trying out what the change is like, adapting to new systems. And then as they move through this change curve, you come to the decision stage. So this is where people have accepted the change, they're working with the change, they're learning how to work in this new situation. They're feeling more positive because they're experiencing what the benefits of that change are. And what you're doing here is reinforcing that change, sending out the positive messages, and this will lead to integration of that change into your business. So this is the time to start celebrating those wins. Another thing to note about the change curve is it's not always one consistent flow. So people can move between these stages as things change and develop. And it can be very useful to introduce people to this change curve so that they recognise at what stage they may be in. And moving on in our 8-step model, create short-term wins. So as we all know, nothing motivates more than success. So create short-term targets in your project. Look for short-term targets that can be achieved without the help from any of the more strong critics of change in the business. And reward the people that meet those targets. And don't choose initial targets that are too expensive or more difficult. You want to be able to justify the expense of each stage of your project. And looking to build on the change. So after each short-term win, analyse what went well, what needs improving. Carry out workplace training at the start of employment that incorporates the change, and then repeat that periodically. Set goals to continue the change, so it will continue with the momentum that you've achieved. And keep the ideas fresh by bringing in new change agents and leaders for your coalition, for your project team that support the change. And then you're looking to anchor the change. So keep talking, keep communicating about the progress that's been made. Tell success stories about the change process. So be very visible around this. Include the change ideas and values when you're recruiting new staff. So when you're doing recruitment, one of your key competences may be thriving on and adapting to change. And publicly recognise the achievement of your change coalition, your project team. So we've been through about change, and this is where we can help with change at Clover as a HR consultancy. So we have a team of experienced qualified HR business partners that can help you determine initially what change is needed, plan for it, and manage that change. We can also provide training for your managers and your staff on how to manage change. So in summary then, we've looked at the forces of change, the problems that you may encounter, and the 8-step model of change. We've outlined how Clover can support your business. So what I'd like you to do now, if you could let me know your 2 takeaway learning points from this webinar, and you could pop those in the chat box. That would be really useful for me to find out what was most useful for you. Whilst you're doing that, I did have a question. I've not had any questions so far on the Q&A, but I did have a question that was sent in by email. And this was from Sue, who's wanting to introduce a new integrated HR system into her company. And she wants to know what's the first thing that I would suggest she does. Sue, the first thing I suggest you do is find your project manager. So either that's somebody internal to the company or employ somebody externally, whether that's a consultant or somebody on a fixed term contract that has those project management skills and expertise. And give that role priority. Once you have that person, they can then help you form your project group. So that would be next step, to form your project group and get that buy-in from the key influencers. And then that project manager and project group can then plan out the strategy for the change. And that will give you a solid plan for moving forward. So I hope that helps. So thank you. I'm going to stop sharing my slides now. Okay, so thank you very much. I'm just going to have a quick look in the chat box. Okay, so yeah, thanks, John. Flatten and reduce the time of the change curve by doing change in the right way the first time. Brilliant learning point. Totally agree. Has anybody got any questions they want to pop in the chat, in the Q&A box or the chat box? So again, it'd be really useful if you could take the time to just put at least one of your learning takeaways in the chat box. That would be really good. I just want to say one other thing about change. Change, in my experience, has gone really well in companies that have taken the time to plan for it. So they've appointed the project manager, they've not tagged it onto another job, of somebody that's already in the business and then they can't find the time to do it, or they've not necessarily got the skills to do it. They've appointed a project manager that's got the skills, that's got the time. They've put together a project team from different levels of the business, and they've planned out the strategy before they've started. And I feel that's key. And creating the vision then and explain to people why you're making the change is really important. So I'd like to thank you all for your participation. I hope you found this useful. If you do have any questions, please contact me or contact us through the Clover HR website. You've got my contact details there. So Louise at cloverhr.co.uk. My phone number 0771 289 4327. Thank you very much. I hope you found it useful. And hopefully I'll see you on another webinar. Okay, take care. Have a good day. Bye. Thank you.